Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. And it's the last Tuesday of the month, which means I have my awesome co-host, Tom Campbell, with me. Well, we're going to try and work this show because I think it's going to be a fascinating show. It started with a book that I've read, but it's all about how we hold on to being right. And we can, with social media, we have become really adept at finding all the people that have the same values that we have, and then get very upset with all the people that don't have the same values as us. And then we have the fake news, and we have the AI that's telling us fake news, and it gets very, very confusing. But the part that I really want to bring up is, if we want peace, if we want to grow up and evolve our consciousness and lower entropy, we need to find that common ground, because I feel like we are so divided. And I want to find a way. And it was brilliant because it allowed me to fix a piece in my relationship that was bothering me a lot too. But it's this need to be right. And we tend to, again, gravitate towards those people that have the same values, that believe the same things as we do. But in the end, it keeps us divided, because right now, I believe we're in a place where it's like a great divide, where we have so many things going on that we're not seeing the bigger picture. And we've decided what's right and what's wrong. And if someone's coming from the other perspective, then they're wrong. And we want to continue telling them how wrong they are. And that's not helpful. It's not helpful for where we're wanting to go. So I think this will be a very timely show, like our last few, but just to help us get to that place where we can say, stop, and say, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. What matters is that we find that peace within ourselves. What matters is that we grow up and lower entropy. And we can't do that if we're feeling divided, angry all the time. So welcome to the show, Tom. I have a feeling this is going to be an amazing show.
Well, a lot of people are dealing with a similar problem. And it's an old problem. It's a problem that was here long before the internet. The internet has just exacerbated it and made it kind of in our face, to where we are now being pushed to deal with it. Whereas before, it was always in the background and we didn't deal with it. And it did cause problems in relationships. Matter of fact, that's where it caused most of its problems, is in relationships. So now we have, it's bigger because now we have an internet. And the internet, for the first time, is able to reach billions of people all in the same minute. Yeah. We never had that before. We've never had that technology. And when we first got it, it was just like all technologies. It hadn't been exploited to all the extents that it could be exploited. But in the last 10 years or even 20 years, we've found ways to exploit it.
Yeah.
That some of them have been very helpful, and some of them have not been so helpful. And one of the ones that's not been so helpful is that the internet is designed, well, I shouldn't say the internet, it's not the internet's fault. The applications on the internet, things like Facebook and all the others, I won't single out Facebook, but all the social applications are there on a premise of clicks earn money.
Right.
If you click on something, then the person that put that something up there gets a penny or a tenth of a penny, gets some money for that. If you have an ad up there and somebody clicks on it, then the person who paid to put the ad up there gets charged because somebody clicked on their ad. So there's money at the base. And in order to get more clicks, the media have found that if you stir people up, if you make them angry, if you make them excited, if you make them upset, if you somehow engage them emotionally, they'll stay there and click and click and click and click because they're engaged emotionally. If you just engage them intellectually, well, they'll get to the point that they're done and go away. You know, they've got the information they wanted, or they've given up, you know, getting the information that they wanted, and they go away. But if you engage them emotionally, they'll stay there and click. And every click earns money from the advertisers to the people running the social media. So what do? If you're a good capitalist? You want to maximize your profits. You do that by setting up the protocols of what news people get, what information they get, and the criteria that you shift from one thing to another, and the content, and you engineer all that so that it maximizes emotional investment, maximizes clicks. Now, how do you maximize emotional investment? You do that by getting people upset, by getting people, you know, sucked in emotionally. And so basically the people on the internet who are running the media, who own the media and get paid by advertisers, they get more money if they can keep you engaged with the emotions of anger, annoyance, outrage, pandering to whatever, you know, turns people on emotionally. Okay, that's the key. If you can do that, you're going to make a whole lot more money. And that's what corporations are all about, is making a whole lot more money. So that then creates this kind of perfect storm between the people who would like to manipulate your opinion to be what they want it to be, and the social media who would like you to be upset and annoyed and anxious and whatever else it takes to keep you engaged. And then the idea entering this perfect storm is the idea of misinformation. Well, if you want to get people upset, you don't tell them about, oh, so-and-so had a happy day today and they petted their dog and everybody lived happily ever after. I mean, they petted their cat, of course, Laurie. And everybody lived happily ever after. That doesn't get anybody emotionally engaged. Everybody goes, oh, yeah, that's nice. So what? But if you tell a story about something that's horrible that's happened, and if you point out the horrible people and so on, now that gets people connected. So how do you do that? Just regular information wasn't enough. Right. So then the information needed to be sensationalized. So all of the media turned into what we used to laugh at the grocery store check-in, you know, the National Enquirer and, you know, the Star and all those things that, you know, 3-headed alien found in a Mississippi garage, you know, and you get all these crazy headlines. And they were there just to be alluring, just to suck people in on an emotional level. So you sensationalize, because when you sensationalize, you create emotional connection. So then all the media started to look like the National Enquirer. All the media was just making stuff up that would pull readers' attention. And when they do that, when I say the media, you know, I'm not mainly talking about newspapers, although they got on the bus as well because it sells more newspapers. Again, it's money. But we're now mostly talking about the social media, where we don't get our news from newspapers nearly as much as we used to. It mainly comes off the web. You know, one of these social media channels that do that. So the news shifted. It wasn't really so much about the news, but it was about how do you make the news more sensational? Some little blonde girl disappears on vacation to Tahiti or something, that would stay front headline news for 3 weeks, even though it really, 40 years ago, that wouldn't have been a 3-week headline. It would have been an article, and it wouldn't have, but it's sensational, and it gets people's emotions going. It's a heartfelt kind of thing. So that's where we've been going for the last 30 or 40 years. And then when we get to things like elections and other things, then the people want to control opinion. So there is misinformation being put out there. And not just any old misinformation, not just things that are wrong, but things that will get people excited, get them upset, get them clicking, and get them doing more things that excite other people. A mob appeared at a certain place, with this and that. Well, that gets the other side excited. So now they want to go make a mob that they can put on the other side of that, and so on. So the social media targeted individual people according to all the data they've taken on who likes what, so you can give them the opposite of what they like to get them emotionally connected. So that's what's been going on. We've all been had in order to make people who are already billionaires another $1 billion or $2 to add to their bank accounts. And that's why this has never happened before. One, there's never been an internet before that would reach billions of people all in the same second. Those electrical signals travel at the speed of light. They're everywhere instantly. So now you can really manipulate emotions, because if it was, a week old news, well, that's been over. Who cares now? But if you can see the people you dislike, ranting and raving right in front of you, well, that just gets you all worked up. So they knew what pictures to send to who to maximize clicks, maximize profits. So that's really the name of the game, and that's why we haven't seen this before. This is, like I say, the perfect storm between greed, manipulation, and actually very exciting times. We live in times with this internet. It does stir the pot a lot. So those old steady, nothing much happened days back in the 40s and the 50s, those are gone. Now they say we move with internet time. Everything happens fast. And when you have major changes, if those major changes are slow to change, everybody accommodates them very nicely. If those major changes are fast, people get upset. And these days they get upset. They click more. So this stuff has been shoved at us, nonstop, as quickly as it could be. So here we are now. So let's talk a little bit. So that's kind of the problem, right?
I'm going to add 2 things to that problem. So one is, when I was growing up, we got a newspaper once a day, right? That was it. But then all of a sudden, we had to have 24-hour news. Well, how can you fill 24 hours of news? So we had to come up with stuff. And the second thing is that because of how search engines work now, and most of them are connected to AI technology, if you put in a search, then they think that's something you're interested in. Even when it could be that I've read a book and I'm like, what is this? And I look it up. But then for the next 10 days, I get the same thing everywhere. It's like, I was looking it up. But right. So there's those 2 things as well, adding on to the fact that now millions of people have internet and it's there. But see, the news companies and even all of these little sites that want to participate, to have 24-hour news means they have to come up with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, That's true. That's another part of this perfect storm, right? Where
Yeah.
the news have to come up with things, whether there's really anything worth talking about or not. But you can't just say, oh, a dog just crossed the street. That's not acceptable. So you have to make something up. Again, you sensationalize it. So
Right.
it's the same sort of thing. And yes, you go investigate, what such and such a thing is, some kitchen implement, and now you get advertisements for that for the next 3 weeks, bombarding you. And that's another thing. It gets you to click. They want to send you something that you want to go on the line and start clicking. Okay, so it's all part of the same thing. Now, as I started this conversation, it's an old problem, but the new technology has just exacerbated it and made it a much bigger problem. But before, it always was a problem. Talk about relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships, we have this thing about, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Basically, that's a metaphor saying that men and women are just very different, the way they see the world, the things that are important to them, the things that matter, the way they go about doing things. So they're just very different. And those differences then create misunderstandings. And those misunderstandings then create arguments. Those arguments create dissatisfaction in the relationship. Okay, so it gets down to this basic thing that you mentioned at the beginning. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with it? Well, it's really, it's an easy thing to say, of course. How we deal with it is a harder thing for us to do it. But basically, and I've said this many times before on your program, the way things work is that you get a data stream, you interpret that data stream, and that interpretation becomes your reality. That is your reality. So everybody lives in their own reality. This is a multiplayer game, so we see a lot of the same things, we interact with each other, and all of those interactions are computed. Those are our choices. But everyone lives in their own reality. And that's unavoidable. There's no way to get everyone to live in the same reality and all see the same things and have, come to similar conclusions. It isn't going to work. That won't happen. We all live in our own reality. Now, the solution to this problem isn't really that we all have to come to the same conclusions about things. We all need to find common ground and agree. All right. That isn't going to happen either if it has to happen by somebody putting up an idea and saying, well, here's an idea, and this is an idea that everybody should like. Because the next person is going to put up something, whether it's true or not, isn't the point. Somebody's going to put something up to sensationalize that. So the next thing you'll hear is somebody will say, well, if you do what that person said, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket and it'll be terrible. That person's awful. Now, whether that person actually is awful and everything would go to hell in a handbasket doesn't matter. Somebody will put that up, true or false, because that gets more clicks. That stirs the pot, you see. So there isn't a solution that we can all hear things and then agree to them. That isn't going to work because in the environment we're in, whatever you say, however rational it is, somebody else will say the opposite. And we can't determine what the truth is because now the truth is so complicated. It's so far away from us. It used to be we lived in a little town of maybe 100 people and we knew them all and we knew the names of all their children. And we kind of had a really good idea of what was happening in our environment and who did what and why. All right, well, we don't have that anymore. Now the people who are making decisions are, 20 levels, separated from us. And they're making decisions for reasons that we don't understand and can't understand. So somebody said this, is that the truth? Well, how would you investigate that to find out whether it's the truth or not? You're going to find, of course, on the internet, 10 people that say it's the truth and another 10 that say it's the worst lie ever. So researching on the internet is only going to bounce you around, randomly. You're not going to find truth there because there's no rule that says the only things you can put on the internet are things that are true.
Wouldn't that be nice?
So, yeah. So if we don't have that rule, and we'll never have that rule, we could never agree on, that kind of censorship that, oh no, this isn't true, because then you give the censors power to decide what's true. So that can't be the solution. So the solution is actually very simple, and that is that we stop being so self-centered. It's the self-centeredness that is the problem. And why do we have so much self-centeredness? Because in this human race, we are in a schoolhouse to become more loving and caring. And we are not in graduate school, we're not in college, we're not even in high school. I don't even think we're at the advanced levels of elementary school. We are in this growing process like in kindergarten, first grade, maybe. And for many people, daycare. We haven't even gotten to school yet. We're still in daycare. So because we have such, in technical terms, we have such, high entropy. We are not full of love and caring and appreciation of other people. It's mostly about us. That's why we have that argument in that relationship, because we have a misunderstanding. And when we have that misunderstanding, we think of it in terms of us, our needs, what we want, what we think is rational, what we think should be done, what we think the other person should feel, think, and do. And we see everything in terms of ourselves, as if we were the master of the universe, which of course we all know we are not, because we get kicked as much as we kick. And no master of the universe would be kicked like that. So we know that. But we sort of have a belief that, take care of number one. It's about you. And we have this perspective that is our perspective. And one might say, well, what other perspective would we have? How can I have somebody else's perspective? I can only have my perspective. Yes, you can have your perspective, but you don't have to force that perspective on other people or on the rest of the world. You say, all right, I live in my own reality, my own personal reality, and damn it, I want everybody else to agree with me and have the same reality I do. It doesn't work that way. Everybody lives in their own reality, and you have to come to the conclusion that other people are just going to be different than you. They're going to see things different ways. And whether that's because of misinformation, or because they're male or female, or because they were educated or not educated, or they went to school in the East or school in the West or school in the South, there's lots of reasons why people are going to be different. There's, billions of reasons why people are going to be different and see things differently. Even just regions of the country tend to see things differently. It's a big country. It takes a lot of people, a lot of space, a lot of variation. So even without the internet, we had this problem of, as you say, needing to be right. And that's because we think that whatever our opinions are, that our opinions are true. That's the way things should be. And things that differ with us are the way things shouldn't be. They're false. So if we look at the word belief, what's belief? Well, if you believe something, then that thing you believe becomes a fact. In your mind, that belief is a fact. It's not an opinion. George shouldn't say these kinds of things to me, or George shouldn't do this, or Harriet shouldn't do that. We have these opinions about what the other person should or should not be thinking and feeling because of ourselves, what we want them to think or feel. So we think they should be thinking and feeling what we want them to think and feel. And if they're not, they're obviously wrong, because we have these beliefs, and our beliefs to us are facts. So you think about everybody with all the different beliefs they have, every one of them thinks their belief is a fact. And being a fact means you can't be wrong. It's just a fact. It's the way it is. And anybody who was smart and had a brain would know that that was the way it should be. Of course. So that's the problem. Too much self-centeredness. We see the world, and when we see it, we see how different it is than us. And then because everything we believe is a fact, how wrong it is and how right we are. The antidote to that is to not be so self-centered, is to say, yes, other people will see things differently, and that's okay. We're all on a path growing up. We all have to deal with the consequences of our choices.
Right.
So if we are demanding, you're not thinking right, you're not doing it right, you're all messed up, you need to do it the way I tell you, if we feel that way, okay, then we constantly are going to be unhappy. We're going to be miserable. We're going to be stressed out. We're going to have illnesses because stress causes a lot of, it's a very strong cause of most of our lifestyle illnesses, which includes things like stroke and heart attacks and all the, the big killers, cancer. They're all very much stress related. So the thing we need to do is say that everybody's on their own path, making their own choices in the way they think is best. That's what they're doing. That's what I'm doing. That's what you're doing. That's what everybody's doing. Okay. And we realize that everyone's different, making their own choices in their own way. Now, if you're not self-centered, you come to the conclusion of that's okay. Everybody can be doing the best they can with the information they've got and what they came in with, whatever they're working with, whether that's, economic situation or physical situation. You have only one leg, or one arm, everybody's different, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we're all different. So everybody is doing the best they can with what they've got, the information they've got, the attitudes they have, the feelings they have, and they will make choices based on those feelings and attitudes. And when they do, they will have to deal with the consequences. So now let's look at consequences in a relationship. George doesn't think and act the way you think he should. So you get angry at George and you fuss and you holler, you shouldn't do that. You must do this, that. And George doesn't think you're acting the way you should. So he fusses at you. And now you're fussing at each other. And after a few years of fussing at each other, you don't like each other anymore and you need to go your separate ways. So that is a big problem in relationships. We need things to be the way we want them to be. That's called self-centered. I define what's right. I define what's true. I define what's good and bad, And you do that for everybody else in the world because you have beliefs, and those beliefs in your mind are facts. If they weren't facts, it wouldn't be your belief. So you see the problem is that everybody's different. And when we understand that it's just the way we are, we're going to be different. And today we have a lot more differences that are actually being allowed. We have different sexual preferences and different national preferences and different cultural preferences. We have all these, and pretty much, we've learned to accept those differences. Okay, people are different. We don't have to persecute people who are different than us. We don't have to be afraid of people who are different from us. We don't have to control the rest of the world. See, it's a matter of control. We don't have to control everything. Just let things be and people be the way they are. Now, if it turns out that we, the people, we, the humans, if we tend to make a lot of bad choices, then what will happen is we'll live in a pretty unpleasant place. Well, that's the way we are. Okay? And you have to accept it. It may get that way. Okay, if we make good choices, we'll end up in very happy and supportive and prosperous places for everyone, not just for a few, but for everyone. So you can't change the world. You can't change anybody else's mind. You can't make anybody see it your way. There's only one person actually you can change, and that's yourself. So work on yourself. Try to get rid of that self-centeredness, get rid of that idea that you're right and other people are wrong, and instead say, I'm the way I am, and other people are different, and that's okay. So it's turning it into right and wrong that creates the problem. If you just see it as differences, then the differences are all right. Okay, there's these people, and they believe things that are pretty much opposite to what I believe. But instead of being upset by that and how wrong, how could those people screw it up for all the rest of us, and get upset and angry, you just say, well, that's the way it is. And if there's more people that agree with them than me, then we'll live in a nastier and more unpleasant space until they realize that the reason we live in this unpleasant, nasty space is because of the choices that are being made. That's the old, how do you make a donkey behave, right? There's two things. You have sticks and carrots. So the carrots are the rewards, and the sticks are what happens if you make poor choices. And that's the way it is with us. So we, and I mean all humanity, we human beings, all almost 9 billion of us now, okay, we can make this a nastier place, a less friendly place, a more violent place, if we make poor choices. We can make this a happy place, a place full of love and caring and support, and everybody has enough food, everybody has enough clean water, everybody has enough space. We can make it like that. We have the resources to do that. It's not that that's impossible, but we don't make the choices to do that. We make the choices that we make, and then we have to deal with the consequences of those choices. But it's not helpful to say, well, that's unfair. I'm a nice person with good ideas, and I have to live in a nasty place because everybody else besides me is making poor choices. Well, you have to accept that that's the way it is. You're part of a social system. This social system has 9 billion people in it. And what this social system produces is the sum, the average over all 9 billion of those people, and that's what you get. So if you get 8 billion of them making poor choices, then everybody's going to live in a not so pleasant environment. That's the stick. We get to look and say, well, do we love the environment we're in? Is everybody happy? And is everybody getting their needs met? Is it a really nice place where everyone cares about everyone else? Is this a love place? Well, if the answer is no, then it's because we're not very grown up. We're making a lot of bad choices collectively. So it doesn't help to single out individuals and say, well, those people are making bad choices and these people are making good choices, because that's just your belief. That's your own opinion. And that's not what makes this place a very sweet and lovable place to live, or a very mean and unpleasant place to live. So where's how do you know how we're doing? Well, you just look outside your window and look what's going on in the world. That's how you know. If there's a lot of wars and struggle and fighting and poverty and all the unpleasant things in life, then we're not doing very well. We need to grow up. If your life is full of joy and serenity and peace and happiness, then you're doing things well. That's good. But there's us individually. Yes, we can hang out with the people that agree with us and everything will seem nice, but that's not what we need to do. We have to see ourselves as part of the 9 billion. And the 9 billion of us create a social system. And we can make little sub-social systems within that. But then the problem is, if we don't grow up, then those little subsets start fighting with each other, and we're right back to where we were. Each of us living in our own little bubble, disliking all the other bubbles. And as it turns out, the way economics and life and everything else works is that you can't just isolate yourself in a bubble. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. We are all in this together. We're all in the same boat together. And until the human race kind of realizes that, well, I'm going to make my own little bubble. I'm going to make my own bubble, and I'm going to make that. If I am a billionaire, well, I can sort of make a bubble, and I can live in that bubble, and I can buy an island and just live on that island and call it Happy Island. But the problem is that's not satisfying. You can have $1 billion or $10 billion in the bank and still be miserable and unhappy. What makes us happy is connections with other people. Those connections we call relationships. And when those relationships are good, we're happy. When those relationships are bad, we're not. You can't buy a relationship. You have to make one by the way you interact. So yes, you could make yourself a little bubble on your own private island and build a big wall around it and play happy music all the time, but you wouldn't be happy. You would find that that's not what humans need. It's not it. You get bored with that. You get tired of it. And, having a couple of $1 billion in the bank isn't what makes people happy. Probably most of the people that have that are not happy people. If they were happy people, they wouldn't have to accumulate all that wealth. So in any case, we are a social set, we humans, and all the other things that we should be caring for, like all the critters and animals and the trees and the air and the water and all the rest of it. We're the dominant species, so we need also to be the caretakers of everything else. And when we get that concept that differences are okay, let them be. It's part of the way. It's part of the way mules learn, right? It's part of the way that our collective society, all the humans, that's the way we live. So you look out, you see the dysfunction. Who can you change? Yourself. So what do? Get rid of your self-centeredness. Stop needing other people to be the way you want them to be. Give up control. You can't control other people to be the way you want them to be. We think we can. Oh, if I just keep fussing at George enough, he'll stop throwing his dirty socks on the floor. All I have to do is keep fussing and fussing and fussing, and he'll stop. We want to control other people to be the way we want them. We need to let that go. Control yourself is the only person you can control. Be satisfied with doing a good job with that, and everything will get better. And let other people get around to that act of self-control themselves. And some people won't do it for a long time. Well, just do it for yourself and realize you're going to have to live with everybody else. You don't have a choice unless you can get in your own rocket and blast off and, live in some other galaxy. And then you wouldn't be happy because you'd be very lonely. So it's a social system. You have to see the big picture, not just you and your friends walling off your world against those people who are wrong. It's all of us together. And we all need to float the boat together for each other. And what that means is love, caring, cooperation, sharing. And what do we don't need? Greed, self-centeredness, mine, that sort of thing. We don't need. Now, here's an interesting point about this that people generally don't understand, and that is that we have in our culture a cultural belief called materialism. Everybody believes it. Nobody gets into school and somebody says, oh, here's what materialism, you need to believe it. We just do believe it. It's just part of being here. This is physical world. We look around and say the physical world, it's a thing. That's where we are. Everything's physical. Our bodies are physical. The water we drink, everything's just a physical reality. It's where we are. Well, if you're a materialist, there's an ethic that goes along with materialism. And that is, there's you, and then there's your environment and everybody else that's in it. So there's you and everything outside of you. Well, a materialist says, well, all that stuff that's outside of you is just resources for you to use, whether it's other people or whether it's the water or the land or the bushes or the berries or whatever. So you grab as much as you can grab. Then you have to defend it because other people would want to grab it away from you. So that ethic of that goes along with materialism is control, power, force. You reach out, you grab what you can grab, however much or little that is, you grab it, then you protect it, you keep it. Maybe you share it with your loved ones, but you have to defend it and fight for it. So you have to control. You have to control the environment. You have to control others who might want to take what you've got. You have to have force to be able to do that control. And of course, if you're going to control and use force, you need power to do those. So control, power, force is the ethic of materialism. Now, we'll put that over on the fear side. That's the ethic of fear. On the love side, it's just the opposite. It's it's not what's in it for me, it's how can I help? And on that side, it's cooperation, caring, service, kindness. And it's not about you, it's about other. You see the opposite direction. Control, power, force is all about you. You're at the center. You would like to be the master of the universe, but you're not. Now you have to use control, power, and force to change that wrong that was done to you, not making you the center of the universe, so the master of the universe. So on the other side, you have people who care about others, not just about themselves. And the ethic of having that attitude is the ethic of caring, the ethic of cooperation, peace, tranquility, helping, service. That's that ethic. So things will not change here substantially until we let go of this concept of materialism. This material world is not the fundamental thing. This material world is, well, I say it's a learning lab. It's a space that we could put in to make choices. And then we evolve toward fear or toward love because of the quality of those choices. So, all right, this is a schoolhouse for us making choices to evolve or de-evolve. And like I say, we're in daycare, maybe first grade, kindergarten, second grade. It's smeared. There's a few people who are in graduate school, and there's a few people who haven't made it daycare yet. But, all in all, our quality of consciousness is kind of low. So we're all kind of self-centered. That's the problem. And the only way to fix it is fix yourself. You can't fix anybody else. And let everybody else be to fix themselves. Because, if you try to fix somebody else, what you do is you make it harder for them to fix themselves. When you go fuss at George about his socks, that makes it hard for George to pick up his socks because you've been fussing at him about picking up those damn socks. And now if he picks up a sock and puts it in the dirty clothes basket like you want him to, he feels defeated. He's given in. He's been ordered and he's obeying, you see. And so everybody's sense of self-esteem says, no, you nag at me to do this. That makes it harder for me to do it. If I could have come to the conclusion that, yes, that really would be nice if I cleaned up after myself, that's a reasonable request. You may have come to that choice, but if you're being nagged about it, then you can't come to that choice because now that's, belittling to you to give in to somebody else's demands. So when you try to force people, when you try to push them to be the way you want them to be, to manipulate them, all you do is make it harder for them to be the way you want them to be. Not easier. It doesn't work. It works the opposite direction. So all that makes everything worse. So if you're having a trouble in a relationship because that other person isn't thinking and feeling right, fussing about it to them is not going to help. It's going to make it harder for them to make changes to themselves. Well, how do you help people make changes to themselves? By giving them a safe environment. That's not an environment where people are nagging at you and punching and pushing at you. That's a safe environment where you feel like you can just be yourself. And if you're being yourself, then you can make it a choice. I should be nicer. I should be more helpful. Instead of making work for other people, I should, pick up my own mess. That seems reasonable, and you might grow up. But if the world is pushing you to do it, you'll resist. And you won't do it. And it's, that's just the way we are, and everything's like that. Take a dog or a cat and walk up to them and push your hand up alongside their rib cage, the center of the dog, and push them. And you see what they do immediately when you push them. They push back. They don't just let you slide them across the floor because that's not their choice. And they don't like others making their choices for them. They have a natural tendency to push back. So does everything. Try that with your puppy. He's just standing there, not doing anything. Put your hand on his side and try to push him across the floor. He will push back because we're made that way.
Oh no, try doing it to a cat.
Yeah, you'll get scratched. You'll get hurt if you do it to a cat. You'll bleed. Yes. That's why I don't suggest anybody do that to a cat. It's too dangerous. But you can do that to a dog and you won't get bitten, but they'll wonder what you're trying to do and they'll try to push back again. And so that's the problem. It's been a problem forever. The problem is a low quality of consciousness. The solution is change yourself to be less self-centered. Actually, a very good measure of maturity is how self-centered are you? Children are naturally self-centered. They're small. They're very vulnerable. They need a lot of services to get by, and it's about them. But as you mature, as you grow up, you get less and less self-centered. They have to learn to be courteous and kind to others. Say please and thank you and those kinds of things. We teach them. Well, all of that social etiquette is there to kind of lubricate social interactions. That's what it does. So if you don't become less self-centered, then basically you act like a 6-year-old your whole life. And a lot of people do that. They're self-centered right up, to the end. They live a whole life and they never grow up much. So they're not very mature. They're still emotionally 6-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds. They're at that level. That's a problem. We need to grow up and act our age. We need to let go of that self-centered attitudes and become more other-centered. How can I help? How can I serve? How can I help? Those are the attitudes you should have. Be a person that's giving. And a lot of people would say, if you're always trying to help and do things, you'll become a doormat. Everybody will walk all over you. No, that's not the case. Actually, you will become a more powerful person and people will revere you. They will want to be around you and they will be nice to you and kind to you because they feel good when they're around you. You're helping pull them up. You're a good example. They're not going to walk all over you. You end up with more power. And I can give examples of that. Look at the people who have had enough power to change the whole world, whole societies. Hundreds of millions of people changed because of them. You'd think of somebody like Gandhi. You'd think of somebody like Martin Luther King. You'd think of somebody like Nelson Mandela. These people changed nations, not only their own nation, but they had an influence all over this planet. That's power. And how did they get that much power? They were kind and caring and asked, how can I help? And they did not get angry. Even when Mandela was thrown in jail for 20 years, he came out and no, he didn't want to get even. He wanted to create a society where everybody could live peacefully together. See, kindness and caring is powerful. It changes things. And look at the people who weren't kind. Okay, maybe they had a good run of power, but they're very quickly supplanted by somebody else who wants that power. And it's a very short-term win for a long-term loss. And none of that is stable. All of the power-hungry things go away. They're short-lived. 50 years, 100 years, and they crumble and they disappear. The influence of the people I just named who are powerful, they'll be around. They'll be in the history books for the next millennia because they were very important and powerful. So no, you won't become the doormat that everybody walks on. It'll be just the opposite. You'll become the person everybody looks up to.
And I also one example of the idea that I had. It was brilliant. It was a prophecy cult, and because we don't have many of those, where the world's going to end in, and they give a date, and then we'll work up to that date, and it doesn't happen, and they think, oh well, maybe it's just off a little bit. And then they go a little bit longer and it still hasn't happened. And then in this case, the leader died. After she claimed she was pregnant at 64. But the point of the thing is that the people never let it go. Even afterwards, they still held on to it, because if they let it go, then that meant they were wrong, and they just couldn't be wrong. And then we come back full circle. It's like, yeah, but this whole thing about what we think is right. It's like, we hold on and hold on and hold on.
Yeah. In psychology, they call that cognitive dissonance. If you do something, and even if you later see that you wished you hadn't, you'll double down on it anyway. Otherwise, you'd have to admit you made a mistake. And you weren't right. You were foolish or this or that. And nobody wants to admit that about themselves because, well, that just couldn't possibly be true. So that's the point. Yes, you double down on whatever your mistake was. You continue making it because that makes you feel better about yourself. So yes, that's another part of us. That's the way we humans are. But when you become a higher quality consciousness, you don't have those sorts of things. You know you're flawed. You know you have mistakes. There's lots of wise sayings about that. When you become truly educated, you realize you know almost nothing. There's so much more to learn, whereas when you're ignorant, you think you know everything. Yes.
I was sure it's funny I knew everything. And then at 30, it was like, oh my God, I'm brilliant. And then oh no, I know nothing.
Yes.
Crap.
Yes. The more you know, the more you see that there's so much more that you don't know. And that's true. So humility is an important part of this. So it's all problems with ego.
Yeah.
It's a problem. Beliefs are a problem. And ego and beliefs are both the children of fear. Fear creates those beliefs. If you believe that person is abusing you by throwing their dirty socks on the floor, you see, then it's a big problem. It's a fear. They aren't doing their share. You're not getting what you need to get. They're not holding up their end of the bargain. You've got all of those problems. And that's all part and parcel of the same thing. So no, there are no mechanical fixes here. It's not like, well, if we made these laws, if we made those laws, everything would straighten up. If we could just, do this or do that, that'll all straighten up. Well, those don't happen. There isn't going to be a mechanical solution to it. And if we, the people, change and become more loving and caring and cooperative, all the people who run those institutions, they're going to follow us. They'll do that too. The institutions will change themselves. If you just go out and find this terrible dictator and you get rid of him, you think, everything's going to be good now. No, within 50 years, there'll be somebody else back on that throne doing the same thing. And it's probably going to be the people who said they were going to fix everything for their children or whoever overthrows them or whatever. It's unstable. Those kinds of things are unstable. And as we found out, even democracies are unstable if people are not very grown up. The only thing that increases stability is a higher quality of consciousness, because then people cooperate. They let other people's differences be. They don't try to run things. They don't try, they don't want to use control, power, and force to make the world the way it should be, because that will never work. All you'll do is harden all the people you're trying to turn around. You'll just make them worse. They'll double down on whatever dysfunction they have, and they'll be twice as bad. So that just makes everything worse. So it doesn't mean that you can't have causes, that you can't go out and carry a sign, that you can't write letters to whoever you think will listen to you. Sure, go do that, but do it with love. Do it without being angry. Do it with caring. Okay, I have an opinion, and I think my opinion's a good opinion. Well, go write your opinion down on a sign and go take it out and put it in your yard. That's fine, but don't do it with anger. Don't do it with upset. Don't do it with stress. So it's okay to have your opinion, whatever it is. And it's okay to share it with others, but not with anger, not with violence, not with being upset, not with stress. Share it. And if they take it, if others take your advice, fine. If they don't, fine. That's okay too. We're all in it together, and things have been getting better. Go back 500 years and you see that things are a lot worse than they are now. So it's getting better. It'll probably continue to get better, and probably continue to get better more quickly. But just have to let everybody grow in their own way. And that's the key. It's evolution. Evolution is slow, but it's relentless. We will get there one day. Maybe not in your lifetime or mine, but we'll get there one day, and we just do our part, and that's as much as we can do. And it's simple. So that's the solution. People are looking for what's the agenda that everybody can agree on.
Right.
You're not going to find that. Even if you get a majority of people to agree on an agenda, fast forward 20 or 30 years, and it'll all be coming undone again. So it's not stable. The only thing that's stable is love. Fear it sows the seeds of its own destruction. As we're doing now, we're sowing all kinds of seeds that are negative, and we just have to live through those and work them off and outgrow them. And if that takes us another century or two, then that's how long it'll take us. But I don't think it will. I think we'll probably take some big steps forward in the next couple of decades. So I don't think the long term is not it's not terrible. As bad as these times seem to be, you have to go through a lot of turmoil when you have to do a lot of changing in a short period of time. And we're just seeing that turmoil now. Things are a-changing, all right? That was a song back in the 60s or something. The times are a-changing, yes. So it's just part of it. So don't let it get you upset. Try to let people be who they are.
I think the best thing that you've said that really clicked in and also was what I had kind of said to my partner is the safety bit. It's like when our safety feels threatened, that's when we hold on. That's when that's the one place I think that we kind of create the most anxiety, is when we're feeling safe. And I think that's where the communication has to happen. I don't know how you can't change, again, you can't change anybody else, but if you can say, hey, I'm just feeling unsafe, that brings a whole different energy into the conversation. You can say, hey, I'm reacting like this. It's poor, but it's just because I'm feeling unsafe.
Yeah. But
And
even feeling safe though is about you.
sure, of course.
If you say, well, I don't feel too safe, the crowds out there are real rowdy and whatever, but that's just the way it is. And I live in times that are like that. And I need to get across the street and go to some other place because my grandmother, needs her pills and I have her prescription here. Then you go out anyway and you deal with whatever happens to you. And if bad things happen to you, well, you tried and that's okay. So the point is accepting that you will do what you need to do and stuff will happen that's outside of your control. And as it happens, you'll deal with it the best you can. And that you should be smart about not putting yourself in danger, not putting yourself in those situations, but you still have to live here. You can't just wall up in your closet at home and never come out. You still have to interact. You have to go different places with people. And if you feel like all those people are okay, they're doing what they have to do, and that'll make you less upset with them, and they'll feel that, and they'll be less upset with you. And we'll even get to the point where we disagree with each other, but amicably, not angrily. And then we'll all get over it and get better someday. So it's not an easy problem, but it's a very old problem. It didn't just start with the internet. No. This needing to control your world, to make it the way you know is the correct way. That's been around from the very beginning. It's just an artifact of a low quality of consciousness. It's just always been here. But now with the internet, we're cranking up the volume a whole lot.
Yeah, we are. All right. Well, I think it's been a really great conversation again. I think we can, that things will resonate with people. This is good. All right. You've been listening to The Heart with Tom Campbell. We're getting the heart of what matters. And yeah, truth, holding on to what you believe, and then letting go and realizing that everybody has their own truths. Everybody has their own beliefs. Thank you, Tom. We'll be back next month.
Back next month. Thank you, Laurie.